Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2024. Man, it's weird to say that. The first webinar of the spring semester 2024. I know it's taken a moment for some of you to log on, but I love to look at the participants button at the bottom and just watch the numbers rising. And just when's it going to stop? No one knows. I hope you guys are good enough to a great first of the year. And if you are a returning student, I want to say welcome back. We have a large returning class, and then we've got a great incoming class as well. So people that are starting, traditionally January has been a smaller semester than the fall, but every year the numbers kind of get closer together. So welcome to all the new students. I know we have at least one new internship program coming in, Compass College. So I want to say shout out to you guys. Glad you're here. And if you've been around for a while, you're somewhat familiar with our webinar structure. So all your classes that you're taking online are to help you excel in Bible, practical theology, leadership, so on and so forth, and to make you become the best version of the leader that God has called you to be. But in these webinars, then we get very specific to how you can apply what you're learning to the everyday situations you find yourself in the local church. The model we use is that one semester we really hone down or focus on character. And we believe that all leadership flows from who you are, that you can't do great things if you're not the right kind of person, that God cares more about who you are than what you do. I heard John Ortberg say today on a podcast I was listening to that whenever, even the greatest pastors in the world, whenever we get to heaven, the thing that God's going to hold us most accountable for is how we stewarded the inner life that he gave us, not on how successful ministry was. So character is where it starts. Then we go from character to calling, about discovering and developing who God has called you to be and how you can steward that gift. Then we move to capacity from that. So there's a whole semester about what skills and practices do you need to incorporate in order for you to tap into that calling or that potential that you have. We're all wired differently, and there's a place for all of us. I'll introduce my guest in a moment, Pastor Heather. But one thing I love about being on the Grace pastoral team with Pastor Heather and others is that we all are so uniquely gifted and called, and we all work together. But it's not just about how can I be the best version of Pastor Heather, because I can't do that. She's got a skill set that I don't have. So I've got to ask, well, how can I be the best version of the gifts and the skills that God has given me? And then finally, what we're talking about this whole semester is church. So character, calling, capacity, church. It begins with C's because, I'm a preacher and just can't help myself. But so the telos, or the end goal of all of this and developing character and discovering calling and increasing capacity is putting that all to use within the context of a local church. That we truly do believe that there's nothing quite like the local church, and that of all the things that God could have done to unfold and carry out his salvation in our world, what he did is he chose the local church. And so we want to develop leaders for the church. So tonight we start a conversation that will continue all semester long on how you can put everything that God has given you into the local church. So before I introduce our guest and jump into the topic, let me say a couple of preliminary things, and then we'll get going. If you are joining us for the first semester, glad that you're here. There is a huge learning curve with anything like this that you're doing. I encourage you not to grow weary. Be patient with yourself, be gracious to yourself, and we'll also be patient and gracious with you. If you don't understand something, we're just an email away. But I encourage you to embrace this whole process, enjoy it. You don't have to have everything figured out today. You'll get it figured out eventually, and you're going to do well and you're going to thrive. And we're glad that you're here. Be sure to read all of your syllabi carefully. Everything you need to know is in the syllabus for the course. And if something's not clear in the syllabus, let us know. But if you have a question, the first thing to do is we have really tried to preemptively answer your questions by developing and writing robust syllabi. So please check there first, and you should have all the information you need. If you are watching this with a group of people, please let us know. Email Becca at destinyleaders.com so everyone that's watching gets credit. We do grade you for your attendance on these webinars. So those grades will be inputted within the next few days. But look, if you check it in the morning and you don't have a grade yet, just be patient. We'll get that figured out. Well, after all the preliminaries, I am delighted to introduce my friend, my colleague, and one of the just smartest people I know when it comes to groups and teams and church systems. So Pastor Heather is the Next Steps pastor at Grace Church, and she does many other things. But we are a church with 4 locations. So I am one of our campus pastors, in addition to what I do here with Destiny and DLI. And Pastor Heather is on our central team, helping to develop and oversee all of our Next Steps processes. So, Pastor Heather, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then also maybe explain what that Next Steps role actually means, and kind of what all is involved with what you do.
Yeah, so thanks, Pastor Landon. It's an honor to be here, and I honor you for everything that you do for Grace Church, as well as what you do for Destiny. It's, Destiny is a new relationship for me just over the last several years, and my life is enriched. It's been fulfilled in higher levels due to just the interactions that I've had with the people of Destiny, the systems of Destiny, the conference that Destiny puts on every year. So it's really an honor to be here. I am the Next Steps pastor here at Grace Church. A little bit about myself. I'm actually from South Louisiana. I am a South Louisiana girl, not to be confused with the North Louisiana girl, because we are not the same person, but I am from South Louisiana, born and raised at a pastor's home. So the idea of the local church is something that's really, really important to me, because that's where I grew up. I grew up in the local church, being from a bayou town in South Louisiana, serving in my dad leading a evangelical type Pentecostal church in a Catholic region was, just a little bit of a learning curve for us. But the things that I learned there, the passion that I developed for God and the things of God, that's where it happened. And so I fully believe how, like, the value of the local church, and for young adults and students and stuff like that, to really engage with that, so that they grow up to still love the church. That's really where my passion for serving came from. And in my experience, that's not always the case from pastors' kids, because sometimes it kind of gets bent a little bit the other way. And so I feel very fortunate that I survived the pastor's home, still love the Lord, still love the church, and still love serving in the church. But watching my parents live the life that they live really did develop and create the person that I am. And truly, through my years of growing up, I always wanted to serve the Lord. But there did come a point in my life where I just got tired, I just got a little weary of following God, serving God in the way that I had, and really had to lean on my personal relationship with Him. And what I discovered is that this is the way. The local church, serving the kingdom God, that is the way. And even in my attempts to take a break and just sit on the pew for a little while and do a little bit less, they did not last very long, because at the end of the day, who I was to serve. I was a servant of God. It's who I was. And so I'm very passionate about serving in the church. I'm very passionate about the value that it adds to the person. I am a better person because I serve at church. Period.
Amen.
I'm not a better person because of the job experience that I have. I'm not a better person because of the books that I've read. I mean, I am, I guess, but the person that I am, truly the core of who I am, has been developed in the times of serving at the church. And I just believe that with all my heart. And so I think as church leaders and as just people who are in the church, really adopting that idea, thinking about that idea, and that leads to what I do here at Grace Church. I mean, I am that Next Steps process is the time someone pulls into one of our campuses until the time that they are serving. Here at Grace, we talk about the journey. We believe that everybody is on the journey, and we just believe that it's never over. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how much you've accomplished, you're always on the journey. So that passion that has been kind of ingrained in me since I was a child, I'm getting to live it out at, in my opinion, one of the greatest churches in the world, and seeing people connect to serving, to just engaging in the church as a whole. And so I get to help develop that. I get to help support people like Pastor Landon in our campuses and getting people through what we call the journey at Grace to ultimately help them live the best life they possibly can, which is serving within inside the church and with outside the four walls of the church.
Great. And one reason I wanted you on to talk to our students is because you've done a little bit of everything at Grace, and
Right.
but because we are a multi-site church and we have people serving in 4 different locations, and then there's a central strategy. So as one church, it's very important that all of our teams are sort of operating with the same values and underneath the vision of our lead pastors.
Mhm.
Um, but still, there's a complexity because we're in four different locations in 4 different parts of the city.
Right.
Where I'm in Tomball, and Tomball is not Humble, and Humble is not Midtown, and Midtown is not Liberty. And
Right.
so we've got some different demographics and geography happening. In our model, the campus pastor has a good deal of influence over the campus. And
Mhm.
so, which means that each of our personalities, play a big role in how our teams operate. So your experience isn't just academic, where you could go online and look at, okay, dynamics of a healthy team,
Right.
but it's just in the real messiness of leading a church under these very unique circumstances, different locations, where, if we just take Tomball, for example, where I serve as the campus pastor, you and I both have sort of separate responsibilities for the way some of our teams function.
Mhm.
We're working together, but we're looking at it sometimes from 2 different angles. And so your expertise here is, no matter if someone's at a church of just a few people or at a large church, you've had a wide range of experiences in trying to lead and develop teams in maybe not the most straightforward type setup.
Sure, absolutely. I think that that's one of the beauties. It's one of the challenges, but it's also one of the beauties of what we get to do here is really your experience, my experience, and just working together, putting it together to create what is ultimately the best experience. At the end of the day, I feel like most of the serving principles, they're fairly foundational. They're not cultural specific. They're not size specific. It's a lot about the heart, the passion, the culture, the values, the vision, and then you just add the other things in. You add the things like the dynamics of services or the dynamics of culture and stuff like that. But just like with everything else in our Christian walk, if we build a good foundation, if we can build a strong, repeatable, sustainable foundation for why we serve, what we serve, and really the why behind it, the other stuff is nuance. It really is. And we may not agree. I wouldn't do it that way, but at the end of the day, if it's getting done to the glory of God and it's getting done and fulfilling the vision and it's not creating another culture within the dynamics of what we're doing, I bless it and say, let's do this thing,
Right.
and learning from the different dynamics. One of the things that I've learned is I don't fall in love with the method. Obviously I have a method and I think it's right, or I wouldn't do it, but I've learned to not fall in love with the method. I fall in love with the message. Falling in love with the message is far more important. And so I take the vision of our senior leadership, our senior pastor, our lead pastor, our lead team, and say, hey, this is the goal. So how we get here, it's like whatever car we decide to drive, let's just be in agreement on it. And let's just do it to the best of our abilities without losing the vision and the culture. Because I think the culture is it's really the big thing. I heard a statement not long ago, the idea that culture eats vision for lunch.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we put a lot of effort into vision, and vision is really important. It's key, but vision is moved. The car that moves the vision is culture. And so at the end of the day, if your vision won't really matter if you don't have the cultures to sustain it. You really won't. If I took Chick-fil-A's vision statement and I told you that their vision statement is to do things for the glory of God, be the best fast food restaurant, something along those lines. If I told you that that was McDonald's, vision statement, you wouldn't believe that because the culture of McDonald's doesn't support that vision of that. I wouldn't believe for 2 seconds that McDonald's is really trying to make me happy. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
when I go there, there's not a lot of that happening. But when I go to, if you told me that Chick-fil-A's goal was to make me happy, I would believe you. I feel like those
Yes.
people there, they're happy that I'm there. They're there to serve me. So you can have all the vision in the world, but if you don't have the culture to support the vision, then you don't really get anywhere with that vision. And I just believe that a lot of times your people serving are your culture drivers. They are your bought in people. And so they are going to drive the vision of your church in and outside of serving specifically. And so if you can get that right, you can really go places.
I love that. Well, let's dive in. I know that's one thing we wanted to talk about this evening was the value of culture, and I love what you said. You know, culture eats vision for breakfast, because a lot of times we can have an idea of where we want to go, but based on the dynamics of what we allow and what the teams actually like, that really determines where we actually go. Like I can have a vision. So one of the journeys I'm on right now is I ran the Houston Marathon a couple weeks ago, and I hit the same time I've hit the past 2 or 3 races, and I feel like I'm plateauing. And so I had a decision to make. I can't really train any harder. I've kind of maximized that input. So
Mm.
one piece of low hanging fruit is nutrition, because I've just always eaten whatever I want to eat.
Mm.
So now I've sat down and there was a vision of, okay, I'm going to clean up my diet. But as long as it remains at the vision, and I could talk about it, I could come in and say, as for me and my house, we're going to eat kale salad.
Right.
But there has to be a whole culture change in my house in order for that vision to happen, which means that when we go to the grocery store, there's things we buy and there's things that we don't buy.
Yeah.
There's meal prepping that has to happen at certain points in the week. There's intentionality of, okay, we made a decision. We're only going to eat out, twice a week, and that's just the decision that's already been made. So many people, I think, even team leaders, we kind of set a vision for, here's where we're going to go. We're going to recruit 50 new volunteers this year or whatever, but the vision is pretty meaningless if you haven't kind of developed a whole system around accomplishing that vision. And that's where culture really comes in, is that it's creating an environment where the vision can actually happen.
Yeah. And I think that that's really, it starts with the leader, in my opinion, believing that serving really does matter, and it's not that serving, talking in this specific vein, but serving doesn't just matter because we have jobs that need to be done, but that serving matters because it really does do something for you as a believer. Like serving and giving of yourself and giving of your times and giving of your talent, it is a deposit. It's a tithe, for lack of a better, it's a gift.
Wow.
That we
Yeah.
give. And so because of that, my life is fulfilled. I think about it like, with tithing, I get the idea that it is better for me to live on 90% of my income than 100%. And I'm bought into that idea. And so I do that. It's very similar to serving. I buy into the idea that it is better for me to not have all of my time and to dedicate my time to something else outside of me. It's better. My life is better that way. I will be more fulfilled, happier, successful. Proverbs 11 says the world of the generous gets larger and larger. The world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller. The one who blesses others is abundantly blessed, and those who help others are helped. I mean, we see it in scripture where when we give, and the more that we give, the more that we actually get. And that doesn't need to be like obviously the reason why we're doing it, but it's that understanding. And so when we communicate that to our people, we stop communicating a need. We need kids workers, we need ushers, we need parking lot attendants, we need because we don't have. God is not a God of lack. So it's not a need. It's a you need. You need this. You really need to do this. The most fulfilled people that I know are the people who are serving the hardest. And I don't just say that as a pastor and someone who leads teams. I say it because it is legit true. I mean, I meet people all the time who serve hard, and they are not disgruntled. They're not mad. They're not grumpy. They are happy. They are fulfilled because their life is fuller because of how they serve or because of how they sow that.
I love that. Absolutely. I was thinking of Luke chapter 11 as you were talking. Um, there's this parable that that Jesus tells, or actually it's a teaching. 11:33. He says, "No one lights a lamp and puts it in a place where it will be hidden or under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand so that those who come in may see the light." In that context, oil was very expensive in the first century. So what Jesus is saying is that if someone lights a lamp, they do it to be seen. They don't waste their resources on something that ultimately doesn't matter. And I think
Right.
a lot of us, if we're not careful, we can look at our life and say we waste our resources on things that don't matter. But then he says this. He said, "Your eye is the lamp of your body, and when your eyes are healthy, that's what the NIV says, your whole body is full of light. But when they are unhealthy, your body is full of darkness." The word healthy and the words healthy and unhealthy in Greek actually mean generous and greedy. It was such an odd colloquialism that English translators initially had a difficult time translating it. So healthy and unhealthy have been the traditional interpretations, but we really now come. It's really generous and greedy.
Mm.
And so here's Jesus' point. He's like, if your eye, if you have a healthy eye, if you have a generous mindset,
Mhm.
then it affects the rest of you.
Yeah.
And if you have a greedy mindset, then it affects the rest of you. Pop psychologists and even some sociologists now would refer to this as either an abundance mindset or a scarcity mindset. An
Mm.
abundance mindset says, I serve, I give because God's been good to me. But I also understand that when I give my time, there's so much more being invested back into me. A scarcity mindset says, I can't afford to give my time because it's all that I have. And Jesus says, if you live with an abundance mentality, then it affects your whole body. If you will serve on Sundays, it affects Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and Saturday. But if you're the kind of person who says, "Nah, I just don't know if I have the time," then that scarcity just kind of reproduces itself in your life. And I thought of that because you're right. The most fulfilled, happy people I know are people that give, and that's
Mhm.
not just finances. It's also time, and it's just this mentality of whatever it takes. I'll give. I'll share
Yeah.
one story, then I'll give you the floor back. But this Sunday, at all of our campuses, we launched life groups,
Mm.
and we had one young lady who came on Life Group Launch Sunday to launch an anti-human trafficking life group, and she was only 3 days postpartum. I know I mentioned it in a meeting yesterday,
Oh,
which is
wow.
just 3 days postpartum. And at first, I was like, "Why are you here? Like, go home." But then it hit me, like she has a healthy eye,
Yeah.
like she's a
Wow.
generous personality, and her life is so abundant because of what God's done for her life that for her it's second nature. Like she just works like, yeah, I had a baby a couple days, but I've got to get there because there's a service
Yeah.
that needs to be accomplished. And
Yeah.
if we can get that mentality of like, I'm a generous giving, I get to do this,
Right.
and when I do this, it makes everything in my life better. it
Yeah.
makes it makes everything in my life better.
Yeah.
I don't
And
know. Go
sometimes
ahead.
we have to train ourselves with that. That's
Yeah.
not necessarily a natural response. I have gotten to the point in my own life where I have to, I've tried to take out, I have to do this from my
Mhm.
vocabulary, and I get to do this because it really is, it's what you're saying. It's an honor and it's a privilege to serve in the house of the Lord. It's not an it shouldn't be done with obligation. It should be done out of the abundance, of the heart, of desire, of the realization that I could never serve enough. I really I couldn't serve enough to really be thankful enough to show my gratitude for what I get from the church. At the end of the day, I could serve every single Sunday and it doesn't equate to the generosity of what God is doing through the ministry of the church, through the worship, through the word, through the relationships, through the member care processes when life hits you hard. It never equates. And And not that it's even supposed to, but even if I needed to try to think about it that way, even if I needed to try to process it that way, it would never equal. And I like what you said too about kind of the way that we spend our time, how we use our time, because at the end of the day, we all have the same amount of time. We all have 24 hours in a day, and what we are able to accomplish with that has a lot to do with how, talking about your, going on a diet, how we prepare for it, how we plan for it. And then specifically to the local church, I'm very leery. I'm going to look at you sideways if you come to me and you say you can no longer serve here at the church because you have too many other serving responsibilities outside the church. I'm gonna look at you funny. And I guarantee you that I am, because I've done it before. I've had conversations with people where they have to stop serving the house that is feeding them, the ministry that is feeding them, the place
Wow.
that they are coming to, because the ministries that God has called them to outside of the local church requires too much of their time. That maybe that's my own personal problem, but I'm gonna look at you kind of funny, because in my mind, and from what I know about God and what I see and how we are supposed to give back, it would be like saying, I'm not going to give my tithe to the storehouse, the church, because I have to give it to somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? So I think that it's looking at what we are doing and saying, hey, where am I spending my time? Where am I sowing my seed? And I'm not against outside ministries by any stretch of the imagination. And I love the people that serve in all of them, but I just, the local church, the place where God has planted me, when I'm too busy to serve my local church, I'm gonna look at you kind of funny. Because that's not,
Yes.
that's not how Jesus did. Jesus served, he served where he was. He served where he was called. He served his people. I mean, we know the story of Jesus washing the disciples' feet. We know the story, and that story always makes me so emotional, because that idea that the Savior of the world would do what he did, it convicts me in such a big way I'll make sure that I've aligned myself with what I'm supposed to be doing. And it really gets me, because I don't like feet. Like I'm not a feet person. I'm not your foot washing service girl, like I'm not a foot person. So it really speaks to me at even a higher level, because that's what Jesus did. And if Jesus asked me to wash feet, if that was the need, what would I say?
Right.
And so many times we look at the needs of what's going on and we say, well, I would do anything, but I won't do that. Or if it was something else, I would do that. But Jesus gives us this incredible example of how he was literally willing to do anything, whatever needed to be done. And that's what he was willing to do to serve the people that he was called to serve in the environment in which he was called to be in. And that's just to me, it's just so powerful.
Yeah, so this story, it shows up in all four of the Gospels, but I love how John frames it. He actually if you back up right before in verse 3, I'm sorry, you back up all the way to verse 2, it says, the evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. So he served knowing how the story was going to end. And particularly those who have a leadership ambition, which ambition in itself is not bad. We're told to desire the best gifts. I think there's nothing wrong with the earnest desire to grow in leadership, to grow in opportunity, to grow in influence. I think those are good things. But those of us who have that ambition, we have to be careful, because sometimes our service is a means to an end. And so Jesus served whenever he knew that it wasn't going to end well.
Yeah.
Like if you knew that, your current opportunity wasn't going to end well, that if you knew that when the staff position would come up, that you weren't going to be hired, someone else was. If you knew that someone else was going to be picked to lead the project and not you, or that you'd be betrayed by a friend, or that the life group you led, or the small group you led, was so small that no one came. Like if you knew all that, that might prevent you from serving. But yet Jesus knew that it wasn't going to end well, but still served. And that just speaks to us with ambition to go, okay, I'm serving because I really do love people and I love Jesus. and I'm not doing this so that things will end well for me or what I
Right.
can get out of it.
Yeah.
And I'll
And I
make
think,
more of the point. Yeah, go ahead.
no, you good.
And then in verse 3, then it says Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. Then in verse 4, he actually does the washing the feet. But in verse 3, what we see is that Jesus was very secure in who he was, which empowered him to serve. Sometimes we don't serve because we're not secure.
Yeah.
We think if I do that, then people will perceive me to be less than.
Mhm.
If I'm the one who's picking up the garbage, or if I'm the one who's making that last run to the bathroom, then they won't recognize the anointing of pastor, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And but those two things. So often we don't want to serve unless we know we're going to benefit personally. And Jesus knew this wasn't going to end well, but still served.
Yeah.
And Jesus served from a place of being secure, because if you're secure in who you are, then you do mop the floor without wondering about like, how's this make me look? But it takes security.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, what does the story change if he washes the feet or doesn't?
Mm,
He still goes to the cross. Everything still goes the same way. So
wow.
the disciples don't know any different if he doesn't wash the feet, if he does wash the feet. There was just a need. There was a need that needed to be done. And so he looked at the need. And I think too, he look, when I read this story, I can't help but think a little bit that Jesus is kind of like, anybody, so nobody's going to do this. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
I've been
right.
with you. I mean, how many times do we see Jesus like, I've been with you all this time, yet here we are still,
Right.
and so he looks around and he sees nobody else is willing to do it. He sees proud hearts and dirty feet,
Mm,
and he's been with them and he's on his way out, and the proud hearts, they're going to come over time. But what can he do? He can wash the feet. And I agree with what you're saying. It's serving regardless of the result, and
hmm.
sometimes you have to convince yourself. I mean,
Yeah, right.
I've been there where you feel like you're the only one. You feel like it doesn't matter. You feel like, or you serve and somebody else serves and it's like you weren't even there and you're like, I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure I was right next to them, because as humans, you just that desire to want to be acknowledged, it's just in who we are. And so
Hmm.
as we become more secure in and who we are in Christ, really what it's all about, I think that those you have those mental battles less. And that's ultimately the goal. That's kind of like that spiritual maturity goal, where it's not to say that I never go, I don't want to do it
Hmm.
today. I don't,
Right.
nobody's going to even know that I did it. We just had our one team gala here on Friday night that we honor all of our volunteers. And there were hundreds of unseen things done by tons of people on our team, and
Hmm.
that the Lord really pressed upon my heart to acknowledge that for every unseen thing that was also done, thank you,
Hmm.
because it's impossible to know all of the things, but don't let the unseen things get into your heart and make you want to stop doing what you did, because the result of what you did is powerful. And just kind of walk through all those things. And so I think that as we grow in our relationship with God, as we grow spiritually, we realize really that it's not about that. It's not about the recognition. We get to the idea that we are servants of Christ. We don't just serve at events. We are servants. And so as servants, what do servants do? They serve. When do they
Hmm.
serve? All the time.
Right.
It's who they are. It's what they do. And we are servants of Christ. That's what we are. So I'm always serving. I'm never not serving, and not from a pride point, but just a reminder point of my life is to be a service. That's kind of the whole point. I am here serving the kingdom of God, getting as many people to heaven, introducing them to Jesus as humanly possible. My life is service.
I came across this passage the other day. It's in First Timothy, and as someone who has a PhD in New Testament, I read it. And I was like, I don't think I've ever read that before. It was just kind of buried there, and it's in the chapter 5 of First Timothy, and it says, "The sins of some are obvious, reaching the place of judgment ahead of them. and the sins of others trail behind them, which like how profound. Like Paul was just so far beyond his time. And like there's the sins of some are obvious, and so now in our current cultural context, there's these obvious glaring sins. What has traditionally been considered wrong is now being heralded as right, and what was uh, previously considered shameful is considered shameful if you don't accept what was used to be like.
Yeah.
There's just this obvious thing that's happening in culture, and it reaches the place of judgment ahead of them, and then the sins of others trail behind them, which is we're seeing unfortunately in the church world. And
Mhm.
it's that we live in a time where when Jesus says, be sure your sin will find you out, the consequences are sometimes delayed. Things that you've said, done years ago, because of digital access, can be unveiled at any time. And there's also situations where you can uh, have some kind of habit or hang up and never get mastery over it, and God has a mercy on you for a while, and
Yeah.
then eventually the judgment trails behind you. But then he continues. He's in the same way, good deeds are obvious. Means that a lot of the things you do are seen, they're noticed. Like your pastor recognizes whenever you are the first to show up and the last to leave.
Mhm.
People notice the heart. Whenever Pastor Heather comes to Tomball, our people notice. Like every time she comes, she's willing to serve, and she's ready to do whatever. We have a saying, anything, everything, or nothing, and it's obvious. People know. Then he continues though, and even those that are not obvious, referring to good deeds, cannot remain hidden forever.
Mm.
And I just that encouraged me so much, because as someone who is all involved in church, I feel like there are some things I do that are obvious. People see it and like, hey, Landon showed up. But there's a lot more things that I do
Mhm.
that aren't obvious, that are just the day-to-day grind, that it feels unappreciated and unseen. And honestly, like, does it even really matter? I think I'm okay with the unseen part, but like the things I'm like, if I didn't do this, would anybody know? But what
Yeah.
Paul is saying is, those good deeds, they can't remain hidden forever. So be confident in whatever you're doing, even if people don't recognize it, appreciate it, and you're not getting the outcome that you wish you did. It won't remain hidden forever.
Yeah, I think, ambitious leaders are often ambitious people, and that's why they're good leaders. And that's why they take those next steps and they become more than the average or the status quo. And so sometimes ambition can get in the way and cause frustration, because you're highly ambitious and you're trying to knock it out of the park. And then it's like, did I knock it out of the park? Did anybody notice what I did? And that can be very discouraging. And I think the enemy uses it, and that's how he gets people to quit. And that's
Right.
that's a reminder to us as leaders, though, too, those of us who lead others, to be sure that we're leading them well, that some, we all need to learn, and the Lord uses things in different ways, but making sure as leaders that we don't get caught up in just acknowledging the people who make the most noise, but that we are actively looking and acknowledging and encouraging those who do often do the unseen things, to help ensure that they don't get caught up. You know what I'm saying? To encourage them,
Right.
to strengthen them so that they don't get caught up in kind of the rat race of that, as a leader, just bringing them along and saying, hey, what you do matters. I don't know everything that you do, but I know you, and I know that you're working behind the scenes, just to help prevent them from kind of going through that door of gloom and despair, and then ultimately giving up the fight and the cause, because they feel like that there's no value to what they're doing.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great, great.
And I think, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we got some questions coming in, so I was going to encourage us to kind of wrap up the content and then get into Q&A. But I know you have a couple other great points you want to make, so I
Yeah,
want to.
just really practically, really quick. I'm a very practical girl. That's why I'm a systems and processes person. But
Yeah,
another really important part of serving is to serve well. And I fully believe that not everybody's called to do everything. And so as a leader, helping develop your people into in the right place to serve where you fit. There is a place for you to fit, serve there. And one of the things that I have learned over my experience experience is just because you do something with all of your might and all of your abilities doesn't mean it's been done well. You know, at the end of the day, I have giftings and I have callings and I have talents, and they are not all of them. You know, and so I'm not going to get up on Sunday and try to lead us in worship. We should not be that desperate. You know what I'm saying? And if I needed to, I'm sure the Lord could honor it. But you understand what I'm saying? And I'm not going to get down and discouraged about that. I'm going to take the giftings that he's given me and I'm going to continue to develop them. And I'm going to serve the kingdom of God with those, because I believe that excellence honors God. When we do things with excellence, when the church is displayed in an excellent way, that brings honor and glory to God. When he sees that, when people see that, that's the Chick-fil-A. That's the Chick-fil-A doing it everybody better than everybody else to bring glory to God. And then really to encourage you to fully buy into the vision and the mission of your church. Wherever you're planted, just decide today, tonight, you're going all in, you know, and help create the culture that's going to promote that vision. You know, don't view serving as your responsibility. View it as your an opportunity. Sorry, don't view it as your responsibility, view it as your opportunity, because oftentimes with responsibilities, when we view things as responsibilities, then when we feel like we've fulfilled our responsibility, we stop. And when we never stop, because Jesus is still here. I mean, Jesus has not come back yet. We are still here. So we keep moving, we keep going forward. And so I just really want to encourage that, to serve well, you know, so we serve. And then the practical side of that is we serve well. We serve our church well, we serve our families well, we serve our communities well, we serve our extended families well, we serve everybody well, not just half-heartedly or just enough to get by. Let's do it well. And I think that that's a big, important part of really what takes something from being good and makes it great.
Yes. I think every person with a desire to be a leader, you pretty quickly know what you're called to do. Like there's things that you love that energize you. And then it's also pretty obvious most things that you're not really called to do, or there aren't areas of gifting. Like I'm with you. I'm never going to be on the worship team. I have no ambition, no desire. I'm not deluded into thinking that it could ever be a possibility. But usually there's also an area that, and this is a pain point, that as you're developing and growing, there's something that you think you're called to do, or you really wish you were called to do, or you feel like that's where it should be and it's not. And the painful part of really developing leadership is leading with your nose, you know, which is saying, I really wish that I could do that, but no, I'm not the systems person. I'm not the a struggle that I've shared before is like just coming to grips with being a little bit more of a introverted, contemplative personality. Like I really tried, you know, to be like the stereotypical what you think of when you think of a man of God, you know, loud and fiery and everyone's best friend, and you know, shaking hands and kissing babies, and like I that was a vision I had of ministry. So I that was a hard no for me. Like that was something really hard to go. I'm I'm not called to do that, and I'm going to be really unhappy and unfulfilled, and it doesn't make the church better. Grace Church isn't better. Destiny isn't better by me pretending to be something that I'm not.
That's good.
It's better, but whenever I kind of lean into who I actually am. And
Yeah.
so I think sometimes we think of calling in dichotomy. I'm called to do A, but I'm not called to do B. When it's really like I'm called to do A, I'm not called to do B. And there's some things in the middle that, man, I really wish that I was called to do, but it's not me, and it's painful.
Mhm.
But man, but it's also freeing whenever you stop having to try to fit somewhere where you just don't belong.
Yeah, and I think that that's where mentorship and really good leadership come into play, because those hard no's, they help get you there in a way that
Right.
somebody that you trust and you know has your best interest in mind. Because we all have blind spots. At the end of the day, we all have blind
Mhm.
spots, and we see things that then that's not how they are. That's a mirage of our life. And when you can have those people, but if you're on an island out on your own and you haven't given anybody the voice in your life to tell you you're not good at that, stop doing that, that's, then it's gonna be a big pain point for you. And that's a really good point. So that goes back to that serve where you fit, really understanding where God
Yes.
called you, understanding what you are gifted to do, understanding where he's leading and guiding you, and being really, really okay with that being it. And trusting that if he calls you to something else, he's gonna open the door for you. Sometimes I've put God in a box and felt like if I didn't bust down the door, it was impossible for it to be opened. And forgetting that he is the God of all things, and whatever door he opens cannot be shut, and whatever door he shuts
Amen.
cannot be opened. And it's realigning that trust to say, okay, God, if this is you, it will happen. And if it's not you, it won't happen. And I'm all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Hey, let's dive into some questions while we have time. So one anonymous question. What do you think about? No, I'm just kidding. I was going to throw something ridiculous at you and just see how long you would squirm. But um, when all you do is ministry, so this person, they work at their church, they serve at their church, uh, and they're just feeling overwhelmed, burnt out, tired. How can you recover from that without stepping back or stopping serving? The question doesn't make this explicit, but I imagine when it's your job too, it's like there's extra complications. You can't just come in and say, "Hey, I need a little break." So how can you recharge whenever you're feeling overwhelmed with serving without stepping back? I
Yeah.
think preface that for a lot of us that we can step back. Like if you're truly overwhelmed, if you do an inventory of your life and your schedule, and you realize, okay, I've just bitten off more than I can chew. Being more strategic and saying, okay, I can't do four things. Like I can't lead a group, uh, be a greeter, serve at the women's ministry like you can say I'm doing five things and I'm just going to focus on two. That's a legitimate. But what are some other options when stepping back or stepping out isn't an option?
Yeah. I think that, yeah, if stepping out and stepping back is not an option, I think it's figuring out, first, it's assessing where we are spiritually. Honest,
Mm-hmm.
for me, when I have felt overwhelmed and where I am, it's because I'm leading on my own strength. Being perfectly
Right.
honest, I
Yeah.
have tried to do this on my own. So I
Wow.
have taken on, because the Bible says his burden is light. We know it's not really light. I mean, the weight of the world was on his shoulders. I mean, we are getting people to heaven. We understand that the responsibility that we have as a church is not to be taken lightly. It is a big deal. However, it's when we try to do it on our own strength. And so
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean you don't love Jesus. That doesn't mean you have secret sin. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when you feel that overwhelmed, and if you cannot step back, like you cannot step back or step out, which I've yet to ever think that stepping out actually is the answer. Usually it's, I'm doing it on my own strength. I have to realign myself spiritually. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to open the doors. I'm trying to make the connections. I'm trying to fix the problems. I'm trying to do this with the wisdom, the knowledge, the understanding, the experience that I have. And when I take a minute and I take a breath and I say, okay, God, this, and this, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
In
Right.
my experience, it changes. And it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
change. The situation rarely changes. The people don't go away. It's not less stuff. It's the strength that I have to fulfill this season of my life, because, you work here at Grace Church and we call it plus ones, but we got more, a lot of us are wearing more than plus ones. It's more work than the actual human being can do in the course of a 24, a work day. It's not me. I'm gonna lean on him. And when I lean, it goes back to that. I realize that serving, giving my time away actually gives me more time. It's giving that away gives me more peace. And so I have found in my life, I'm kind of I'm out of balance spiritually. Again, I'm not in sin. I'm not saying anybody's in sin. I'm trying to do too much on my own.
That's great. I would make two other observations. One kind of a broader, and one more practical. But broadly, I think that to realize that Jesus somehow did a lot more than I'll ever do and you'll ever do. but never seem to be in a hurry. I mean, there's just this rhythm, this pace. And so I think it is just accepting that you're not Superman. And so it's like, here's what I'm going to do. If you work in the church, today is a great example. I put in a full day's work today. I did not get everything done that I needed to get done or hope to get done today. And I am okay with that. In about 10 minutes, this is over. I'm going to go have dinner and watch a show with my kids and set my alarm, wake up tomorrow and do the best I can to tackle the to-do list, knowing full aware that there'll probably be some unchecked boxes tomorrow. And I've just had to learn to live at peace with that. Like, you just can't do everything. But more practically, I would say you might be surprised at how powerful a conversation with your pastor or immediate leader could be. Because sometimes when we think that we're overloaded and that no one knows and that we just keep doing what's expected of us, sometimes our pastor would love to have that conversation because they usually see it on you. And they're
Yeah.
usually thinking, she's doing or he's doing these 4 things, and I would love for them to step back and really focus on and do these 2 things well. I think you might be surprised that stepping back from things you're doing might really be an option. Your pastor may not be disappointed. He or she may be kind of anxious to have that conversation with you of like, I know there's been times where I've watched people on the brink of burnout, and I see it happening, and I'm like, should I tell them
Right.
or should I wait for them to tell me?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been in that situation, Pastor Heather, where where we kind of see it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. We see it coming. And
Yeah.
oftentimes if you do finally have the conversation, we're not surprised in the least bit that you are completely overwhelmed with what you're doing. I completely agree with you. You know, when I say
Yeah.
I don't support the idea of stepping out, I don't think
Right.
that leading ministry is ever really the way. I don't know that it ever really fulfills. And again, I don't know everybody and
Right.
everybody's situations, but I do think, I mean, I've had those conversations with my leader, and it's like, you want me to do this, this, and this, and I cannot. I simply cannot. So I need to know what is the most
Mhm.
important thing you want me to do. And that's where I will start. And when I'm done with that, I'll move to the next thing. And I've never in my life been met with, I can't believe you, you know? And then if you are, then you probably need to think about a leadership change.
Right. All right. Well, let's they're starting to roll in now. So back to your comment that culture eats vision for breakfast. What are some descriptives or attributes of a healthy church culture, in your opinion?
In my opinion, it is it's representation of the vision. You know what I'm saying? So if you know, here at Grace Church, we talk about our vision is in one church in many locations, you know, spreading the gospel until everyone hears. So for us, a healthy culture is everybody knowing that and everybody driving in that same direction, where people are passionate about salvation and driving people to their next steps because the one matters. The excellence of the systems and the processes and the quality of preaching and ministry that we do pushes and elevates that. If people are coming in sloppy and they're coming in late and they're not showing up and they're not serving, then I'm very aware of the fact that they're not concerned with the one, and I have an unhealthy culture. I think healthy culture is represented in what you hear people say. If there's a lot of, now I have to do this and I have to do that, then they have missed the point of what we're doing. They don't understand the why of the reasons why we want them to do that. Does that make sense? And so I
Absolutely.
think it's in the language, it's in the turnover, I think, is a big one. If you got a lot of people turning over on your teams, you got to stop and ask yourself, why aren't they hanging around? You know, something is not right in the culture of our teams that people do not want to stay and serve very long.
Mhm.
And so I think that's it. But when you have seasoned people who were in the positions that they're in for a very long time, language is moving in the same direction, goals, you know, people are driving people to the same place and they know what that is. I think that you could look and say, we have a strong culture.
Mhm. And I think what's challenging about this question is that culture just by definition is hard to define. So you mentioned Chick-fil-A versus McDonald's earlier in the call. And the thing is, if what makes Chick-fil-A special, it's not that they say my pleasure, or it's not that everyone smiles. It's all those things together. And it's kind of hard to go, here's how you have a healthy culture. You do these three things, because if everyone at McDonald's just started saying my pleasure instead of you're welcome, it wouldn't make McDonald's Chick-fil-A. And so sometimes, just to apply it to church life, is that sometimes we see healthy culture at a different church, and then we try to adopt the practices, but it's not, the practices are just outcomes of something that's already there. But when
When
I think
healthy,
about
yeah,
yeah,
when healthy culture comes from healthy people.
yes,
So healthy culture is
love
going
it,
to, if you have healthy people, this healthy discipled people, people who are really in love with Jesus and have a strong relationship with Jesus, then they're going to exude healthy culture. It's, it's angry people versus happy people. It's the tangibles and the intangibles. I mean, it's
right,
ultimately, and you, like you're saying, you can't always define the intangible
yeah,
things. Healthy
right.
people will create healthy culture.
And if you're looking for like a more straightforward list of descriptions or attributes, I would start with the fruit of the spirit. And if those are if those are evident in your church, you're doing, it shows there's healthy fruit is growing. Um, so I know whenever our church is healthy, um, we are less critical. So like whenever our church isn't healthy, or not in a healthy season, or we have we've attracted some unhealthy attributes, um, I know that if I make a decision, my first thought process is, oh man, someone's not going to like that. That's
Yeah.
not healthy. But
Right.
whenever I can say, hey, I make this decision, and people are going to just say, hey, I don't love it, but I'm on board. But it's so critical. Are you open? Is the culture open to change? Um, Outward focused is another, I think, great descriptive of a healthy culture. Like it's not just about what's best for us, but what's
Mhm.
best for us to reach others. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's
we say at Grace a lot. At the end of the day, the question is what's best for the church, and we
right,
make decisions a lot of times based on what's best for the church, and sometimes that
right,
means it's not best for an individual, but that's what's best for the church, and people
right,
being able to navigate, make that change, and get on board with that. Yeah, that's a good
right.
one.
And by church, we mean the mission, not the institution. So it's not like what's best to preserve what we have, but it's
Right.
it's it's what's best to fulfill the vision that our pastors have commissioned us with. So it's not like, because I've been in environments where what's best for the church has really meant like, how do we just prop up this institution we have that we really like,
Yeah, no, that's good.
and not about the vision. Awesome. Let's Here's another great one: how to find our fit. We got to find our fit. uh how do we do that without feeling like we're demanding a position? We just want to offer, we want to offer what what we're gifted with. um Maybe we're not even fully in touch with what the gift is, but our spirit is like, I just want to serve, and I don't want a position.
Yeah, well, then I think that's exactly what you do. Then you just serve. You know,
Yeah.
my Pastor Mike, one of our pastors here, my direct upline, he says oftentimes, what if you don't know what God has called you to do, then God has called you to do whatever needs to be done right now.
Hmm.
Every church has a need. Every church has something that they need help doing. And so if you're not really sure where you fit, I mean, obviously there's the practical gifts assessments and things like that where you can kind of find your gifting. Everybody has natural likes and dislikes. Mentors can kind of help you navigate through some of those. But at the end of the day, if you're not seeking a position and that's truly your heart, then just serve wherever needs to be served. For our Humble campus, many years ago, there was just a conversation that said, hey, we're going to have to get a parking lot team. We have multiple services and we need help getting people in and out. And so a guy just said, oh, I can do that. I'm not going to pray with people at the altar. I don't really like being in front of people. I'm not your greeter, and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
you need a parking lot team, I can do that. And he led the parking lot team for over 11 years because there was a need. And so if you really are just wanting to serve, then serve. Then go to your leader, go to your pastor and say, hey, I have a desire to serve this church. What do you need?
Hmm. And if there are any processes or systems your church has, if there's a membership class that you haven't done, or some sort of uh, procedure that the church has instituted, make sure that you're not bypassing that. There have been times where someone will be in our church for a long time and they've never done the things that serve as on ramps to serving, but they come and have a private conversation of like, hey, like I want to serve, what do I do next? So if there are things you haven't done, I would encourage you to do those. And two, if it really is, whenever you serve, the position opens up, and so uh, I think just what Pastor Heather said, just get in, serve somewhere, and whenever you show up, good things will happen. Let's talk about it from a leading a team perspective. There's someone on your team or someone you observe, and they're kind of pushing into an area outside of their gifting,
Mhm.
not able to operate in the level of excellence that's needed to represent the church well. Uh, how do you have, with the disclaimer that this is your conversation to have? Like, I think if it's not your conversation to have, here's how you deal with it. You just look, you don't.
Yeah, you
But if
don't do
it's your yes, if it's your conversation to have, how do you have that conversation?
Yeah. I mean, we have as leaders, that is one of the burdens of leadership is sometimes you have to have those no conversations and you can't get away from them. I've had to do it. And some of them that I've had to do, it's kind of my fault. I've put
Yeah.
people in positions that I thought would be really good in positions and then got them in there and it was a train wreck. And so I've had
Man,
to
I'm so
have,
happy to hear you say that.
oh my gosh, I've had to
'Cause there's
unclimb.
been times.
Yeah, I've had to unclimb trees. And so I just have to swallow my pride and I unclimb the tree. But one of the things is I never removed anybody from a position. I gave them a way to grow in that position. What ultimately I assessed is that you lacked some qualities, either that you didn't match our values, one very specific one. I mean, the conversation that I had was you are completely counter our culture. The way that you handle people and the way that you deal with people is completely counter our culture, but I'm going to help you get there. Let me help you. I'm going to give you a mentor, and this person who I trust and I know has our culture is going to help walk you through. And I don't want to change you. You are who God created you to be. I'm not trying to change you, but there is ways that we do things here, and you're going to have to get in alignment with those things, but I'm going to help you. Especially if I put somebody in a position, really, even if I don't, if someone is in a position and they have served, I'm going to honor their service. And so I'm never going to just remove somebody unless there is like an ethical, moral, legal thing that we got going on. But if this is just about culture and this is just about, you've got kind of a disgruntled person or something like that, it's my responsibility to put a plan together to get them where I need them to be. And we'll sit and we're going to talk about this plan. I have found it goes one or two ways. They are completely offended, completely disgusted, cannot believe you would even consider that. And so they leave on their own. And you learn your lesson and you you pick yourself up and you move on, or they grow. And what a win if you can take a person who's all in for your organization and grow them into an effective leader. I mean, what a win for you. And not for you, but for your organization as a whole, your church. And so it's going to go one or two ways. Either they're going to not get it and they're going to go, or they're going to get it. And in my opinion, you win either way.
Right. And the opportunity to grow within, if someone really just truly isn't in a place that's a good fit. I remember when I first came to our Tomball campus, we had a greeter who didn't smile. And after coaching her for a while to smile, we just realized that smiling was always going to be something that she just, her natural disposition was to not smile.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, so sweet lady, we're like, hey, we need help actually in the cafe making coffee, and she thrived there. So sometimes there are small adjustments you can make, and giving people say, hey, not this, but that.
Oh yeah.
And
I have told team leaders before, if you've got a good person on your team who's faithful and that is really all in for the church, find something for them to create a position for
Right.
them so that they can continue to serve. They're just not succeeding in this specific
Right.
area.
And if you're not the lead pastor, however you handle that conversation, think about it in those terms as how would my pastor handle this? You don't have to dump everything back on his plate. I know he or she would really appreciate if you did not bring them every difficult conversation you need to have. But you
Right.
also have to think about, like, how would they handle it? If they're more of a no nonsense, we've got to get the mission done, and if that means then you can handle it maybe a little more aggressively. But if their disposition is forgiveness and second chances, it's always trying to represent. So every time I make a decision, I'm always thinking through: is this how my pastor
Yeah,
would handle this situation?
that's good.
Um, then last one for the night. How do we honor and apply, Sabbath and rest? And I think that probably goes back to what we're talking about, the feeling of overwhelm, and you have to make a decision of like, I can only do so much. So how do we honor Sabbath, rest, and still be highly functioning, valuable team members?
Yeah, I think that, you've got to know the culture of your staff, your leader. It goes back to having those conversations, setting those boundaries. I learned many years ago that no is a complete sentence. And
Yeah.
one of the things that our senior pastor here says a lot is you can say anything as long as you can say it respectfully. And so if you can be honoring in your boundaries, I think you can set any boundaries practically. One of the things that I did several years ago as my family grew is I started leaving my laptop at the office during the work week. So I work, Sunday's a work day, and then I work Monday through Thursday in the office. And I started leaving my laptop at the office. And that didn't make me unavailable. It just limited my availability. So
Right.
if I couldn't handle the situation from my phone, then it would have to wait till tomorrow.
Mhm.
And if it couldn't wait till tomorrow, then I
Right.
guess we're gonna have to figure it out. If I was in the middle though of a big project and something really important that I was working on, I took it home. I'm not
Mhm.
leaving anybody high and dry. We host conferences and do all that kind of stuff here. I'm not saying that. But I set that boundary to just say, hey, if I can handle it from my phone, I'm there. But if I can't, then it will just have to wait. That was how I kind of started handling my nighttime routine so that I could
Mhm.
be more present with my family. Cause I would, an hour would go by and I'm still on my computer and I was just going to
Right.
answer one email really quick. You know what I'm saying? And so that's one very practical thing that you can do. And then a lot is communication, respectfully communication of what your boundaries are. Don't make your leader guess what your boundaries are. Be honest
Mhm.
with them of, hey, Saturday is going to be a really important time for me and my family, whatever it is. So if it's a 911, I'm always here, but if it can wait, that would be really helpful because this is what we do. This is what we're trying to accomplish. And again, if you're under good leadership, I don't think you're not going to have a leader who's going to scoff at that. So I think it's respectful communication, reasonable boundaries, and then doing it. Because one of the things that
Mhm.
I learned too is I was training people that I was going to always come in and at clutch, at the ninth hour and fix
Right.
it. And so also what you end up doing by, like leaving your computer at home at night is you can't fix the spreadsheet or you can't do it. So they'll learn to either communicate with you at an earlier time, they'll
Mhm.
learn to fix it themselves, or they'll realize it can wait. And so really the whole organization potentially elevates because people manage their time better, they communicate at a higher level, and stuff like that. So that's just some things that I've done.
Yeah, that's great. I my thing is I will typically put my phone on the charger, like whenever I'm done for the day. So like after this call, for example, the phone will stay in my office charging, and I tend not to check it until I've already had my prayer time, devotion time, and usually have my kids to school before I actually pick up the phone for the first time that morning. Just a small boundary. Um, and then we do work Sunday through Thursday. So Friday is the Sabbath for me, to the best of my ability. And what I mean by that is that there's just, you know, just with by the nature of what we do, sometimes we're needed for things, and so I prioritize it, but I also um, realize that everyone's in a different season of life, and one thing is I between Destiny and Grace and then some of my academic stuff, I have a lot on my plate, but I generally have a good deal of flexibility, which means that whenever I'm feeling it, whenever I'm feeling like, man, I just am over, I just need a break. Uh, then I can cut out a Thursday afternoon if I need to. Like, so I just think it's knowing yourself, and
Mhm.
I can get really frustrated because I live in my calendar. So
Yeah.
whenever I say this is going to be my 24-hour Sabbath, and then something gets put on the calendar, it can throw me off. When I go, okay, I really do value the principle of Sabbath and rest, and I'm going to make it a priority. And I hope it can be the same time every week. But there are some weeks where it's not possible. Then I'm going to just carve out and do what I can. And the final thing to always remember in this conversation is that Hebrews refers to Jesus as our Sabbath rest. And Tim Keller makes this point beautifully. Tim Keller says that he's our true Sabbath because uh, we don't have to work for our approval or our acceptance. That because of Jesus, we're already approved and accepted. So then we go back to our work from this place of rest
Mm.
where I'm doing this because I want to do this. I'm
Yeah.
doing this because it brings me joy, fulfillment, and it's part of my mission. But it removes that I need to do this so that people will like me or think that I'm good enough or think that I'm worthy, that I'm having to earn my keep, so to speak.
Right.
Um, and so remembering him as a rest, just I think in leadership, that mentality is so important, that I'm working from a place of rest
Mhm.
rather than to earn my keep, that I don't have to. When I'm
Right.
writing a sermon, it's like I'm going to do the best of my ability, but my value isn't wrapped up in how well this is received. That was already decided 2,000 years ago on the cross.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really good. And that goes back to kind of what
Yeah.
we talked about earlier. When we're feeling that overwhelming, there's probably an imbalance in some area of where our strength is coming from. We're trying too much on our own to try to make this whole thing happen. When we rest in him, there's just kind of this, you just hold your head a little bit higher, you breathe a little bit deeper because it's not all riding on you.
Love it. Pastor Heather, thank you so much. Tonight was wonderful. I can tell by the questions that have come through, as well as the chat, that this has been a big hit. Thank you for not only what you taught us, but for how you exemplify these values. And I'm grateful for you and that we're on the same team. Thank you for investing in our students tonight.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was an honor, and I appreciate all that you guys are doing and helping the church grow with good leadership. I love it.
All right.
All right.
Well,
Love you
until
all.
next time, we'll see you soon.
See you later.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.